So now, why don't we look at things we need to know about the electric car in 2012? I mean, we've been promised perhaps that we're going to have fully electric cars on our roads for a long, long time now. We've got the hybrids out there. They seem to be becoming more popular. But what about the electric car? Is it going to be ubiquitous on our roads in 2012? Maybe it will be the year for the electric car in 2012. Well, there was a documentary out a number of years ago called Who Killed the Electric Car? And it was all about the reasons why, in fact, we don't see the electric car so common on our roads at the moment. The electric car was on the way up in the States a number of years ago, and now there is a new documentary called Revenge of the Electric Car. It should be making its way to New Zealand in 2012. It's by documentary filmmaker Chris Paine, and he joins us in the States today. Hello to you, Chris.
Hey.
Can you take us back, in fact, to your documentary called Who Killed the Electric Car, and sort of just give us a wee history lesson on what happened there?
Well, the brief history lesson is that California told the car makers that they wanted to sell gasoline cars. They also had to sell zero-emission vehicles, which at the time the only thing you could do really was an electric car. So the car makers, everybody like Toyota, Honda, Ford, Chrysler, Nissan, they all came to market, General Motors, with pure electric plug-in cars.
Yeah.
And I happened to buy one, and it was a pretty terrific car. The problem was that there are a lot of factors behind the scenes, pressure from the oil industry, pressure from the car industry, pressure from all kinds of sources saying we don't want these cars on the road. And after 5 or 6 years, they shut the program down, they reclaimed the cars, and in many cases, they even crushed them. Huh. So we made a film about why that happened and why that was probably a bad idea.
Because many people think that the electric car isn't here because the technology isn't available or wasn't good enough. So that's not completely true.
Yeah, that's totally not true. It's like, there's two factors of that. The one is there's a lot of resistance to change in the automobile because people are very used to a certain kind of automobile and they want it to be exactly like their gas car. It's the same problem when the car came along to replace the horse. People say, well, it's not exactly like the horse. You can't like feed it at home. You can't tie it up easily. When will the car do all that? In fact, they would even call the car the horseless carriage and say that a car had horsepower to reassure everybody that it was exactly the same. And the truth is that the electric car, the plug-in car, is in fact an advance. It's a better system. It doesn't completely replace the car, but the gasoline car. But you can do all kinds of things that you can't do with the gas car. So the people that make money off gasoline cars push back on that. They don't want to see that happening, and they'll come up with every possible explanation as to why you can't have it and you don't want to try it.
So the conspiracy theorists have been right that it is the men around the boardroom table from the oil companies that have been holding back the technology.
Well, I think it's not. I'm not really a conspiracist myself. I think a lot of it just has to do with basic human inertia. It's like, do I really need to try something else, especially with something as valuable and important to my life as a car, if you're someone who drives a car. And it's difficult for people to want to try it. And they go, well, what are the problems? I'm going to run out of battery power. It's not going to go far enough. And they make their big list of reasons. And the trick with these electric cars is you kind of have to experience them to understand what it's all about. The idea that you don't have to go to the gas station is a very powerful one once you actually experience that. And the car companies, to respond to this, have said, okay, well, wait a moment. If you're really worried about running out of power, we'll give you a plug-in hybrid so you can drive electric for the first 40 miles. And then after that, good old gasoline will kick in and you can go farther on that. I'm generally disposed to pure electric cars, which can run 80 or 90 miles. And if you're lucky enough to have two cars, your gasoline car can do the long trips for you. But most people just do short trips.
Yeah. So how far down?
In fact, they make the joke too that we don't have an airplane sitting in our driveway for that once a year that we want to fly to Auckland or something. We rent a seat on that plane.
Yeah.
And if you're going to own a vehicle, you might as well have one that's like as clean as possible that serves most of your trips.
That's true. So if the electric car hadn't been killed off all those years ago, how far down the development cycle would we? You know, would they be ubiquitous right now?
I think you would see more of them. I mean, this is going to take a little while. Even when we switched from horses to cars years ago, it took 10, 20 years for this to excuse me, really get going.
Yeah. Okay, so now looking to the latest documentary, Revenge of the Electric Car, does this documentary now leaves kind of those big companies behind and actually looks at the entrepreneurs and the smaller people who are persisting with the technology?
Oh, that would have been a good idea too for the film. But what we did was we said our last film was really about watching the system fail us, like how the big interests came in, they take over the government, they use law, they get in the way, they destroy these things. This film is about how people on the inside of a system can work to change things from the inside. And unfortunately, the car business is very, very expensive, and people don't necessarily want to buy a car from someone they've never heard of. So what we decided to do in this film is to track it from the inside out, and we ended up going with 4 different characters, 3 people from within car companies and 1 person on the outside, and see what their obstacles are over the course of 3 years to bring electric cars to market here in the U.S.
Because has it become apparent that, like the space race, you can't rely on NASA, you can't rely on the big machine to do it for us. Now you got people like Richard Branson, who then puts out a prize and says to a whole bunch of entrepreneurs, look, you come up with the killer machine here, and we'll give you all this money. I mean, are we now heading down that route?
Well, one of our 4 characters is this guy Elon Musk, who in fact is starting a space company called SpaceX here in Southern California to refuel the space station, and I think eventually he wants to go to Mars. Elon made a fortune on PayPal when he sold it to eBay and a couple other companies. And he decided that in addition to starting a space company like Richard Branson has, as you referred to, he wanted to come into a startup electric car company and take that all the way. So we charted him for 2 years as the company went from pretty much a basement garage operation to a publicly traded company through all their obstacles. And I think your point is very right. You've got to have people on the outside of the system who say, the old guys can't figure this out. You've got to have a new generation of people coming in and pushing it. And that was why we covered Elon. So
in Revenge of the Electric Car, I mean, do you still encounter any resistance against the electric car at all?
Oh, incredible resistance. General Motors has a plug-in hybrid called the Volt here that I don't, maybe an international car by now, I don't know. And they're just getting it ramped up. But every time there's any kind of problem, it blows up in the press like a huge, huge story. Just a month ago, actually it's happening right now. They ran into some problems with some crash tests with a battery catching fire. And, you'd think the Hindenburg had exploded by all the press they get.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of gasoline cars get recalled for fuel leaks. Volkswagen had a recall. I think Honda's having a problem. This stuff never gets pressed. So everybody's waiting for the new thing to fail. And the sad thing about that is that something like the plug-in car, which finally gets us off the Middle East oil problem, should probably be embraced rather than all set fire to it.
Yeah. I'm talking with Chris Paine, who is the director behind Revenge of the Electric Car. Will 2012 be the year of the electric car? What about the battery technology? I mean, isn't that the thing that is holding us back? The fact that batteries are so big, so heavy, and the technology of batteries is still fairly old.
Well, I think batteries is what's really launching us forward. For years we had the lead-acid battery, which is the most toxic battery in the world, and it wasn't able to do a longer-range vehicle. And what's happened in the last 5 years, thanks to laptop computers and cell phones, is that lithium batteries have come into the market. So suddenly you have companies like Nissan putting $6 billion into pure electric cars run by lithium batteries to leapfrog over Toyota, who's been sticking with a hybrid strategy. So I think the advances in batteries are really making the electric car revolution possible. I don't think this will be a one-year revolution. 2012 won't be the year of everybody having an electric car. But I think it will be the first year that most people will finally get to see them available as an option in the marketplace.
Yeah, because the cars that you feature, like the Chevrolet Volt, the Nissan Leaf, and the Tesla Roadster, they're expensive cars, right? I mean, they're not in the price range of the average consumer.
Well, actually, the Nissan Leaf, I bought ours thanks to federal and state rebates here. It's under $30,000. I think around $25,000 US or something is about what we paid for that car.
Okay.
So Nissan really wants a mass-marketed car with their Leaf. The Volt was in the high 30s, like $39,000 before the $7,500 rebate. So that was like a $33,000 car. So if you compare this to, higher end cars in the U.S., these cars are not that expensive. The Tesla, however, their first Roadster came out at like $100,000.
Yeah.
So obviously that's only for a specialty person.
I mean, that was the car of Silicon Valley startups, really, wasn't it?
Right. And basically it's a Lotus Elise. It's the fastest production car in the world. It goes 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. And, when you drive that car, you feel like you're having a midlife crisis or you're George Clooney.
Indeed. Well, what about the infrastructure? I mean, I'm sure you can plug your car in at home, but there is going to be this need for, where you park your car at work or at the supermarket or out where you're shopping, whatever, you're going to need to be able to charge the car.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that electricity is like everywhere. And, they had a problem with the hydrogen fuel cell. I'm taking you outside for a second. I hope this works on
Sure.
Skype. You don't have to be in California to run solar on your roof. I don't know if you can see it there. The way
yeah, some solar panels on the roof there.
All those panels up there on the.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that array on my roof on the corner of the house there, that powers. We have 2 electric cars and pure electric cars in our garage. That easily powers that source. You can't do that on a gasoline car.
Huh.
And when people can see that you can do that, even in places like Germany with overcast, or I don't know what your weather is in your part of New Zealand, but suddenly you're getting people off of the oil, and that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, because I mean, one issue with California, in the summer, is that everyone turns on their air conditioners. And
right.
So, and you have these rolling blackouts occasionally, don't you? So if everyone was plugging in their cars and relying on the grid, then there's possible infrastructure problems.
Yes, but it's curious that the power companies really like the electric car, because what you can do is you charge your car at night. So when you get home from work, you plug in your car. During the day when your car is parked, the idea of mass deployment of electric cars is that you can use it to stabilize the grid. If you give the option in your car, you tell the power company they can buy power back from your car during the day when you're parked at work or something, and that can stabilize the grid. It's called the vehicle to grid. So the power companies and the defense people love this, because finally you have a way of doing of storing power locally, and if everybody's car can do that, that'll help make the project better.
Yeah. So
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. So you've got a Nissan Leaf. What is the experience of driving the electric car? Obviously, it's very, very quiet. But is it powerful enough? Can you get up to a decent speed?
I think this is it. People think the electric car is about the environment, which it is, or it's about keeping energy money in the country rather than exporting it to the oil-producing nations, which it is. But what it's really about on a visceral level is a better driving experience. And I've had electric cars now for 15 years. The first time I sat in an electric car and accelerated that car, and it was so quick off the line, really, really fast, and you didn't hear some huge engine roar behind it. It was just like all the power was there instantly. You went, well, this is really going to be the future of driving. People are going to like this better than sitting in that relic from the 20th century that has the exhaust come out of it every time you hit on the exhaust.
Yeah.
So what I hope is going to happen in 2012, and not to be like the dreamy idealist here, is that people will finally have a chance to test drive these cars, and it transcends you and I having a debate about it. or your viewers thinking about it, what it might be, and people can go, oh yeah, I tried one, and it either worked for me or I didn't think it worked.
Yeah, but see, in between the last documentary and Revenge of the Electric Car, we've had the big economic collapse, haven't we? And also of American industry and the bailouts and all that. So there's all that coming into play at the moment, and you're driving the Nissan, which is obviously not an American-made car, right? So is there this there's this need for Americans to be buying American-made products, but are Americans going to be producing electric cars in the future?
Are you boosting America there? That's awesome.
Well, I just know that from inside America. There is a thing about Americans making American products for American jobs.
Well, I have my other car that I bought is General Motors Volt, so I have one of their cars too, and both the Volt and the Leaf are terrific cars. I think GM had to reinvent itself after going into the brand purgatory after so many years of kind of mediocre cars, and they came back to market with this Volt, which is just a tremendous car. First 40 miles are electric, then it switched into gasoline. So when we made Who Killed the Electric Car, I would have been shocked if you told me that 5 years later GM would be back in the market with such a good electric car. I think that the car industry, not just GM and Nissan, but all of the car company realizes that this is going to be the future with depleting oil, with consumers asking for options, and they're all in the game. Yeah.
Can you see that a time in the near future, maybe 2012, where it becomes more shameful to be driving a gas guzzler? The Humvee, which I guess is now out of production anyway, but the big SUVs down the road. Will it be shameful to do that?
Well, I think it will be more like smoking. I mean, it's when you get into the ideas of shame and smugness in terms of what cars you drive, I think that kind of ends up backfiring. And there's even some backfiring on the Prius because, you think you're so smug, you have a Prius. But the reality is if you're using a lot less gasoline, you feel like you're a lot more in charge of your whole situation. And I think this will become more of a positive experience as opposed to one in which we feel like we're stupid for driving a Hummer.
Yeah. Okay, finally, will we see Revenge of the Electric Car in New Zealand in 2012? Because I was at the beginning of the interview, I said maybe it's coming, but hopefully, yes, we'll see it here in New Zealand.
I hope so. Yeah, we're just finishing our U.S. theatrical run in December here, and international should be happening early next year. I don't know the exact details on New Zealand, but I love it there. When I was maybe 14, I was down in the South Island touring around, and I'd love to come there and show the film myself if I get lucky.
Oh, great. We'll love to see you down here. Chris Paine is the director behind Revenge of the Electric Car. Thanks so much for your time today.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Cheers. Hey, great. Thank you.